Okay. Good night, gentlemen. Good night, everyone. Welcome to Fatherhood Talks. It is your weekly dose of getting to know fathers better, getting to know how fathers operate, and getting to know how fatherhood works in this new modern world we live in. We have our panel here tonight. We're going to be discussing a very interesting topic tonight. Tonight's topic is, can we be ride or die co-parents? And if you, as you see the thumbnail for the YouTube page, it has a couple that you may know pretty well that looks like saying, can we ride or die? If you got me, I got you. And I think that's becomes very beneficial for our children when we are being positive co-parents. Again, I'm Ron Osborne Williams, and I'm going to let the team fathers introduce themselves, and then we're going to get on with the discussion. Take it away, guys.
Gene Rob Menard, father of two young adults, a son and a daughter.
Donald Jones, divorcing father of two, a daughter and a son.
Johnny Gaspard, father of two, a son and a daughter, 23 and 20.
Larry Jordan, father of two, grandson, that's 10.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I am a father to a tribe of 7, and my granddaughter, because she had to get on me by leaving her out, and one grandchild, my granddaughter.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm a father of 2 teenagers, a divorced dad. Name is Rohan Rodak.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Ed Tenney. I am a father of 3 biologicals and 3 step children and a baby granddaughter that's still in the hospital, but she's doing so much more better.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is John Alexander Ramirez. I'm a father of 2 toddlers, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'm still married to my wife. I am married to my wife.
Come on, is that everybody? Okay. I have to remind us that Castro had to remind us that he's still married to his wife.
It's a choice, a daily choice.
Make sure there's no mistake about that. The Doom, Fred, you guys are down there in the gallows.
They might be distracted.
Okay, they might still be right. So let's jump right into this, guys. I think one of the things that we sometimes think about is this idea that co-parenting is a thing between people that separate. But I think that that's a misnomer. I think co-parenting is a thing between all parents. And it's something that I think some parents take for granted when they're together. And so I wonder if people would kind of maybe even share their own experience with this co-parenting. Has you found it to be this ride or die type of relationship you've had with the co-parent? Or have you not found it to be a ride or die relationship with your co-parent? And how are you working towards trying to get to that ride or die relationship?
Well, Ron, I'll jump in right away. The fact that you even mentioned that about co-parenting when you're married, I thought that's very interesting. The term in and of itself has been, I guess, established to kind of reference people who are not in the same household, who are separated from each other. When you hear the phrase co-parenting, you don't think of two parents living together, married, or whatever the habitual habitational situation may be. So that from that perspective, that term co-parenting, when they're living together, you just say parenting. So I like how you kind of made sense that we are co-parenting regardless of whether we're in the house together or separated. So thank you for that clarification.
Let me verify that a little bit for you, Johnny. Doing a lot of work with, doing a lot of this work, and Gene can probably really attest to this. This is when we get to idea that most of the parenting sometimes go on through the mom, and dads do this kind of pseudo parenting, and then it sometimes, and so when we're looking at really getting fathers to really re-engage in the idea of what their parenting looks like, it is taking on some of those roles of saying, hey, you have to really actively co-parent with this other parent. You can't just say, oh, wife, you take care of it, because that's been the history. I'm going to get the bacon and bring it home. You cook it and you take care of the kids. So, maybe during that time we're talking about, and this is really not coming so much for the men, but it's really coming from the women who don't want to gatekeep their kids. Where is the part that you doing with the parenting, and why am I always doing it? So that's why sometimes we find ourselves on the outside. And when I say on the outside, not outside, but like outside of the real parenting realm, we looking more to be providers than being caregivers. Like that number one no I've heard fathers say, I got to babysit my kids this weekend. And I've always said that, that's a mindset, that the real parenting is the mom does that stuff. I'm gonna do it this weekend. I had to babysit the kids, so I can't come with you. Where an engaged father would say, no, I'm bringing the kids with me to the event because they're my kids and they're going to hang out and they're going to experience where I'm at as a father. So I just wanted to, make that clear, because sometimes people, if we don't introduce it, people will say, hey, if I'm married, I'm doing a good job being a father.
Gotcha.
And sometimes that's not really the case. Because if it was,
I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think, and I get now why they say co-parenting when it comes to separated families. The term co means cooperative parenting, that the parties are cooperating in how they're parenting the children. So I think that's where the term co-parenting comes from. But I think that makes sense even within a household where the parents are there. As you were explaining about how sometimes the fathers are pseudo, as a term you use, parenting in reference to their involvement. Oftentimes in those scenarios where the father is more involved, because I know where, and coming back to the separate parents, there used to be the term in Florida where they described it as visitation. So they no longer use the word visitation. They now refer to it as time sharing, because their thing is, well, how are you visiting? It is your child. You're not visiting your child. You are taking care of your child. Mm-hmm. So they removed the term visitation and from it, and it's now time sharing. So again, from the perspective of understanding the ride or die aspect that we are on the topic today, I think it just comes to, and I think this topic is more so those parents who are separated. Would I be right, Ron, in reference to the concept behind today's topic? Because if I'm
this is why I put that disclaimer in there. It's not exclusively for these separated parents. It is for fathers who are in the home who have this idea, like that they are good co-parents.
That's her job. That's her job.
If I could jump in, on that, Johnny.
Go ahead, Cash. I see you got your hand up twice.
And I'm looking at it from a perspective of not being a contrarian, actually experiencing this in real time with my wife. I'm still married to my wife. And I've come to understand that if our values hadn't aligned, for her to be my ride or die, or for me to be her ride or die, we would not be able to co-parent. because our values on how we're raising our kids will be
Separate.
And
Gotcha.
if I don't live at, because I do live at home, I have an active role in what I feel my kids should be learning, versus parents or fathers that aren't in the home, don't even have a relationship with the mom anymore. And then there's no shared values. So she's telling him X, Y, Z, and you're like, well, I believe in this, right? So just the value of being able to co-parent kind of goes back into who you chose to have kids with, right? Who you choose to have your children with in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about co-parenting, from my perspective, is ensuring that your values are being respected or valued or are shared with your partner,
Gotcha.
right? Because if she has a different value system than my value system, well, shit, we wouldn't have never been ride or die in the first place, right? Because we weren't about the riding or the dying. We were just, right? So I think there has to be some values that have to be set when you talk about parenting, right? Like my son today, and this is why this is interesting how it resonates. My son today came home asking for Roblox. And we were like, well, mommy and daddy got to talk about this, right? Gotcha. Our values are different on certain things. So we just can't go willy-nilly. She makes decisions, I make decisions, and we never got centered on our values as a home, right? Yeah. So I think that's kind of the root and the groundness of all of this, just from my perspective.
And that makes sense, because I was thinking about my own personal upbringing, as Ron was saying. My dad was at the house. You see how I said that? But he wasn't really involved in the parenting. You know, my mom was the one who dealt with the parenting, and he'd come in and deal with the discipline when we acted crazy. Or if we needed something that mom was not willing to buy, my daddy would spend the money and make sure we did it, as long as our grades were right and we were behaving. But outside of that, he really wasn't involved in the parenting the way my mom was. So I definitely get the ride or die. And I hear what Castro just said is so crazy, because that understanding of values, when you have two parents that are not necessarily, who may live in the same house, but are not necessarily on the same page in how they're raising their children, can lead to so much destruction unless you have outside forces that help. And I was fortunate to have grandparents that played a major role in supporting my mom's version of what the right things were. And because my dad wasn't as involved in the parenting, her values, thank God they were good, were more impactful in my life because of the support from her. Where had it not been good, had they not been positive supporters and values, the person you see before you today may not be the same man. So when we talk about that co-parenting, if you don't have two people who are ride or dying for each other and how they raise their children, if you don't have those around you to support one way or the other, your children are left to choose which of the values they want and run with. And that's why we end up oftentimes with children who may be respectful to one parent but disrespectful to the other. So again, I just share all of that with the co-parenting thing. This topic is definitely interested in reference to that. And I see it all the time with young kids when I go into these schools and the way they talk to some of their parents, and I'm looking at them and my head twists to the side, because I'm like, did you just talk to your mama like that? And I'm like, as a father, I'm thinking, ain't no way you would have said that to the daddy. But then again, if he's not present, who is there to guide them in the right way to speak to the mom or to speak period to the parent? So that's just my take on it, and I think it's an awesome topic that we're discussing here tonight.
You know, when you talk about co-parenting, it's and I'm glad you guys were talking about, because there's two different aspects to it for me. There is a co-parenting when you're not living together, and there's a co-parenting when you are living together. I find the most difficult one, to believe it or not, is when you are living together and you haven't discussed how you're going to raise the kids. Because you're coming from two different schools of thoughts, like you said, Johnny, where one feels this is not that serious and I'm going to let it just go, while the other's like, no, you need to be on top of it. And then you have the introduction of, am I going to do corporal punishment by spanking the kids? While the other's like, you ain't going to touch my kids. So it makes it kind of difficult unless you are in constant communication and getting each other on the same page on how you are going to raise the kids. When you're living in two different households, the parenting is a little bit more simple, because when you're at mom's house, you have a set of rules. When you're at dad's house, you have a set of rules. And so, but it has its own trials and tribulations, because if something occurs where the child is at one home, you have to be that ride or die where it transverses to the other home. So they're getting the same consequence to the actions that they've done, because there are times where kids will use one house as freedom from the consequence of what happened in the other home. And so you have to be able to manage those. But like I said before, within the same household, that's when it becomes difficult. And you don't want to argue in front of those kids about who's right, who's wrong, because then they're going to be like, you know what? Now I know I got mom on my side, or now I know I got dad on my side. And we're going to team up against the other person. And if you think kids don't think like that, trust me, 100%. We thought like that. They think like that.
This is true.
So that's what you're looking at when you're talking about co-parenting. So when you're discussing the ride or die, it's, I'm going to have your back while we're in front of these kids 100%. Even if I disagree with you, we agree in front of them. When we get together, we're going to have a discussion. And then I'll let you go back and fix whatever it is. Because once you have that other parent come back and say, you know what, dad was wrong with what he did, and I just want to come back, and this is what's going to happen from here on out after I talk with dad, it negates the level of power that parent has. So it's up to that other parent to come back and say, hey, you know what? After thinking about it, I was a little bit too rough. Here's what we're going to do going forward from here. And so it still allows that parent to have control and power over the situation. And then you two discussing it aside from in front of the child. Now discussing, not arguing, because there's a difference. And so once you fix that issue behind closed doors, then you bring it back to the kids. But
I would even suggest to the parent that, as you said, that parent initiate, but the parents come back together and say, we thought about this.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this. And here's what we're making a new decision on. Because the kids will still try to play if they don't see like this idea, and we do it and we don't mean to do it. We'll tell our kids something and the other parent not around, and they believe that is contradictory to the other parent, even if we re-support it. But when we're there together and we say, hey, we talked about this and we disagree, you're not going to get a car. And when you get a car, you're going to have to go get a job and put the down payment, and then we will help you with the other part of the payment. And then what happens is no looking like, but mom, but dad, we made a decision just like anything else. Mm-hmm. And you know how stubborn we can be with each other. So imagine how stubborn we're going to be with you.
Professor Lightburn.
I think
I'm gonna hold on one time before Lightborn comes on, because I'm gonna make another statement, and I want Lightborn can chime in on this also when it comes to the co-parenting, because there's another dynamic, not even a circumstance, but another dynamic to co-parenting is when you have that step parent involved in the life of that child, right? And so now I'm coming in as essentially, as the child will probably say, depending on the age of the child, as the outsider, trying to regulate them. And so now you have as the biological parent, how am I going to react to someone else parenting my child, right? And so one thing is, and there's a jealousy aspect that happens, because if your child connects to that step parent and has little things with that other step parent because of the way they parent, the biological parent sometimes gets jealous of that. Like, why can't you talk to me like that? What's wrong with me? And so it's important when you're parenting, even coming in as a step parent, that you have that constant communication and you have that level of trust, not only between you and the child, but you and the other parent, that there are sometimes with that step parent wants to be liked so much that they'll go back and say, don't worry, I'm not going to tell your dad this, or I'm not going to tell your mom this. Well, they got to know that there's a level where it's going to be like, nah, your mom needs to know. Either you tell them or I tell them, or your dad needs to know. You tell them or I tell them. And so there's that dynamic that plays into it too. And, you guys can chime in on that.
Wouldn't you call that all that is required within all of those things is some kind of high emotional intelligence and some executive function to be able to say, as a parent, these are our responsibilities and these are the things that we want to make sure get across the table. Parental units don't know how to really play together like that, to be able to say that. Now, how do we have that conversation to be able to say, from a high executive function or emotional intelligence, I have to make sure that I know how to communicate with your mom as an adult, not because I want to gain your trust or friendship, or because what I've come to realize through co-parenting with my wife is that I've called and referred to and felt as I had to babysit my children, because even though I live at home with them, I've lived with them since they were born, I felt like I had to babysit my own kids because of my inability to communicate with my wife, which then made me feel that she does not allow me to be a dad. And I take it out in all sorts of different ways that manifest that, right? So I say all that because all of this requires the men, us as men first, to hold ourselves to a higher level of emotional intelligence, for lack of a better word, or connectiveness to ourselves, to be able to find our groundness, find our values, and then go from there, right? Because you can't coach or teach if you're not even in the house. That's why the other man has more influence than you.
Yeah,
It's about influence with our children at the end of the day.
That drive was too long.
Fred, need to mute.
Right here.
Go ahead, Lightburn. Mute Fred.
Okay, no, I was just looking at the topic. We're saying co-parenting or ride or die co-parenting, and it's two schools of thought. We got to first break down what do ride or die even mean. And we have to understand that ride or die is emphatically a gangster term. Always remember that it's a very hardcore, roughneck, rude boy, ragamuffin. I know you would like that one, Johnny. Terminology that you have to fully understand. And I think sometimes people may use it out of context. It sounds really good because you may hear it because it's a very popular saying. But if you understood what the substance or even sustenance of ride or die really means, and being from the streets and understanding what that means, that's a life or death situation. And so that means that just simply ride or die simply means that we're going to get ahead even when we don't get along. That's number one. And number two, it means that the mission doesn't change just because your feelings did. That's ride or die in a nutshell. But when we talk about co-parenting, the school of thought on co-parenting, it makes me think that parenting is the only word that starts out plural and ends up singular. And so there's a whole dysfunction that we have to put a word that start out plural and end up singular in some type of recovery, as if the word messed up. You understand? And sometimes we're so messed up. We'll take something that's perfectly sound, right? And take our dysfunction and make the word dysfunctional. And so the fact that we have to add co-parenting when parenting is a plural action anyway, is just speaking to humanity as a whole and how far we have to go and how far we have to come when it comes to, and I heard this word a lot as well, values. Now, when it comes to that word value, I think we misinterpret that and misappropriate that as well. Because value is not something that you receive, it's something that you give. And so if you really had values, you would value somebody. But the reason your value is ineffective and your values may be ineffective is because it values nobody. And most of the time, that's where we use that value. And that word gets a little dysfunctional and misconstrued as well, is because we think values is how I feel about something or how I see things, as opposed to how I feel and giving my best self and what I value to add value to someone else, which adds value to that humanity. And so, fortunately, and sometimes unfortunately, it really should start with the mother. That value should be so evident in the mother, where that child becomes a witness. You understand? To how much your value was really worth, because no matter how mom devalued you, my dad value was so strong it sustained both of us, if not all three of us. That's value. And so I think a lot of time we have to really change the narrative. But before we change the narrative, we have to first understand it. And so we can reteach the narrative, because I think a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is terminology wise has gone awry.
And I hear what you're saying, Lightburn. Hold on, Ajit. I hear what you're saying, Lightburn. But the term parenting in and of itself implied cooperating together in the raising of our children, right? That's that plural that you said turned singular, okay? That's the term parenting. The reason why I think the system, because I don't think it was just generic in how that word co-parenting came in. It was due to the fact that there was constant bickering and fighting among separated parents in how they were raising these children. You had one parent fighting against the other in reference to how they raise their children, how they take care of them. So the court said, much like when we bring people in our business, we don't want that. We don't need the courts in our business. But when you bring them in your business, they're gonna tell you, "Oh, since you can't parent right, you are going to have to learn how to co-parent, aka parent cooperatively. Cooperate in how you parent. Since you can't seem to do that on your own, I'm gonna tell you this is what you got to do." And that's where that phrase came from. Because it wasn't, as you said, parenting in and of itself requires the parties to raise their children the right way. Why should I tell you to cooperate in doing so? And that's because you had parents who were not. Go ahead, Lightburn.
Now, I love what you said about that, because let me tell you the dysfunction part about it, and how you said when the courts come into play, how, and I'm just going to use some legal jargon. You understand? Because you can, if that family doesn't make it, or that child becomes a victim of those parents, you understand? That makes those parents and whatever crime they may have committed by that
child,
against that child, be it morally, civically, or whatever the case may be, then that makes them co-defendants in this co-parenting, right? And so, and the fact that the judge have to put some type of stipulation in place, and that term would be called what do they call it? A corrections parenting, because now you got the system have to set guidelines, right, to almost make you parent this child.
Not make you parent, but make you parent the right way.
But I'm saying, and that's what we're talking about, because that's what they call the correctional facilities, what they call them, rehabilitation, whatever the case may be. But you're right, that's what the correctional facilities call it, make you do stuff the right way or conform to what the society says a particular thing should be. And so, yeah, you made a great point, but I can see the legal jargon in the dysfunction of this particular topic.
Yeah, but don't forget that with parenting, right? And even with the co-parenting, and as we talk about, okay, so if you want to take history, if you want to go back, let's start talking about the role of the fathers within the household, period, back in the day, right? So fathers, we're talking, but we're making it seem like fathers never parented. Fathers parented. They threw the ball around with the kids. They went outside, they played, they did that stuff. But we really didn't see that as the parenting piece till later on. Because that's their quality time, that's the time that they spent. What we saw when we were like, well, fathers are parenting their kids, was when they came down on the kids and taught them and came down with some punishment. And we're like, oh yeah, now you're parenting your children. Well, the parenting comes along with aside from that piece. And when you talk about co-parenting, and if you want to bring it down to now, the co-parenting, I agree, it's because of the fact that the parents were separated and they have to get along. But then you also have, and let's get into the interracial dating, because now you and then the extra religious dating. So if I marry someone who's not even of the same religion, they're going to have a different belief than I am. And that's where the co-parenting has to come in there. If they come from a different ethnicity, you have the different type of co-parenting there. So it really encompasses a lot. I know we're breaking it down into just these two where you're living together apart, but then you got to start talking, when you talk about co-parenting, it's a really broad, and it encompasses a lot of differentiations in what people believe and how they grew up, and how to bring those aspects within the household to co-parent together and make it, I won't even say uniformity, but collaborative. And that's what you're looking at when you're co-parenting.
I'm sorry, Gene, but I think Castro and Lightburn already said it. Lightburn said parenting is the word. That's what it is. It ain't, regardless of what ethnicity you're from, regardless of your religious background, you are parenting this child. As Castro said, if you're living in the same household and you both come with the same mindset as to how to raise your child, then you are walking in the same direction before you even bring a child into the world. You should already have had that conversation. This is how we're going to raise a child. She's going to be raised Catholic. They're going to be raised Jewish. They're going to be raised Baptist, whatever it may be. That should be the conversation if it's done the right way. And then you know what you do at that point? You just parent. You don't have to because we both are doing our role in the job. Like I said, I just think it's parenting, and I think Lightburn said it there. That's what it was. Whether it be plural or singular, that's what we're doing. It's parenting our children. It's
it's not that I disagree with that. I don't disagree with what you're saying, Johnny. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is with the co-parenting, right? Because a lot of it is like, when they talk about co-parenting, it's usually on the father's end, right? But what I'm saying is that I agree with the co not even needing to be there because of the fact, but I said the co is broad. It encompasses all these different aspects, right? But the co really doesn't need to be there because fathers were parenting way before. And just because you don't agree with the way that I parent doesn't make me wrong. It just makes that's the way that I parent.
Gotcha.
So I think when you bring into the case with the law, now this is my opinion, when you start bringing the law in, it's because your parenting has become an abusive form to get at the other person. Because that's when you start going tit for tat and saying, well, no, I'm going to let them do this because you don't want them to do this.
Gotcha.
And that's where the argument and fights come, where we have to now bring the law into it. And then it's the co-parenting piece. So I completely agree with it should just be parenting, period. Because you devalue one of the people once you start saying co-parenting.
Gotcha.
I like
Mr. Lightborn.
that part. Real quick, fathers. You know, talking about swimming lessons. I had to go to court to ask for swimming lessons, and let's keep this in mind. Here I am with a stranger, a total stranger, asking to allow my child to do swimming lessons. We know that not every situation is kosher, so to speak. There's different scenarios, different cultures, power and control, different religion, etc., etc. Parenting is, you know, what can I say? Maybe the younger parents is on a trial error. Maybe the grandparents can do a better job. It's not a walk in the park. It's like assembling a engines. You're putting parts together to get the finished product. And, you know, you're not going to get it right all the time. You're going to make mistakes. We're human. And, you know, bringing in a stranger can be sometimes doesn't make the situation any better. Sometimes they do, but sometimes it doesn't make it any better, because the reality is you go back on the streets and life changes, inflation, COVID, and so many things happen. I'm on board with communication. That word, communication, respect, and so forth, that could alleviate and change a lot of problems we deal with today. And fathers here, as we go this journey, and we can, we discuss different scenarios, and that's what we're here for, to empower fathers and empower anyone who's listening. There's no school for parenting, but there is guidelines. And we just gotta, if you need help, ask for support. And that's why we are here at the Fatherhood Talks, to support you. To support you with any questions you have. I think all these men here can answer most, if not one, all of these questions that you may have. I just want to put that in the mix as we.
Yeah, but even if, in Rohan, even if we can't answer it, you can hear enough opinions to form your own decision on what you think is best for you to do, based on a variety. I think one of the things that we don't have in our society as men is variety. There's only, when we think about getting clothes and certain shoes and things that we pick out food, we don't have a vast variety of things that we just say, oh, we'll take this. I'm good with this. I'm gonna wear some slacks and this button-down shirt. When your lady go to get ready to go to the thing, she got the dress, the blouse, the pants, or she changed over to the jumper, the romper. She might wear the boots, she might wear the sandals. So the variety is a little bit different. And so we have to put that in context for us when it comes to, because also in parenting, our parenting styles as fathers won't have that, might be way different. And I think that it goes almost back to originally what Castro said and Lionel said, and now you're saying, and I think we're all kind of saying this, is that there are many people getting in these relationships romantically, but not communicatively. And I give an example is, what's the man name? Seem like he don't age. Not Brad Pitt, but not Bruce Willis.
George Clooney?
George Clooney, right?
No, the dude, Mission Impossible.
Oh, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise's first marriage to Nicole Kidman ended. It was great, fantastic. Most people don't know why it ended. It ended because Tom Cruise was a Scientologist, right, and Nicole Kidman was a diehard Protestant. And when it came down to their children being Scientologists, that wasn't going to happen. Now, you would figure that from that example, in that separation, Tom Cruise would maybe say, well, I'm going to do something different with the next woman I get. So when he got with Katie Holmes, you would feel that, okay, Katie Holmes, we had a child. And the same reason he didn't continue. So we are very conditioned to not trying to change and do anything different. The same reason him and Katie Holmes could not continue their marriage and condition it is because Katie Holmes said, my child, I don't want my child to be remember this influence on the mothers was hard on their parents. Their parents influenced that, and Scientology maybe didn't have enough strength or what have you. And then also, it really depending on Tom Cruise's influence into the family. What was he allowing the mother to do most of the caregiving, and he was out making the movies and doing the things, and how was he operating? And some people would say that was unfair because he should have had an equal chance for his kids to be part Scientologists and part Protestants. That's what people would say, because if you're talking about being fair and balanced, that's what should happen. But in many instances, those marriages ended because of that. And so what we can learn from that is we need to do a lot more in-depth communicating, getting in the same page, and that old Martin being on eye to eye with the person that you plan to have these children with. Because us who have children out of wedlock know that because we didn't have any eye to eye. We didn't have anything. We just had hot sex on the platter, and then the baby came. And when that occurred, now we trying to play catch up, and catch up really doesn't work because there's so many other issues besides just the child catch up. It's like, hey, why don't you marry me? Because you had a kid with me. Oh, why don't we have a different relationship? There's so many other factors. Whereas people who are romantically and they get involved and they make this decision, spend that time to talk about it and not have to play catch up or have to play divorce later. So I just want to throw that out there because I think we're saying, everyone's been saying it, but let's make it plain for the guys and people listening. You need to be a good parent, you must be communicating with the other parent. And that parent had to know you just like you know them, and they got to accept you for you and you accept them for them. And then you can move on with the kids. But if you're not going to have this acceptance for each other and understand that these are the values that we have individually, and then these are the values we have together for our family, it's not, you don't see it working. I don't see those families coming to therapy and being able to work. They're not going to be able to work because they're still holding on to what I want. What about me? And you never can get anything done when you talk about I and me, because that doesn't work for the team or for the family.
Go ahead, Castro, you got the hand up.
Thank you. I have my hand up, but I don't want to change the subject to where Ron just left it at, so I want to be quiet. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Brother Eddie, you're quiet over there. Any thoughts on this?
I frankly, man, when I think about fathers who are co-parenting with their child's mom, I can't imagine the difficulty it must be to do that. All I keep thinking is a quick example of when my firstborn biological, she's a girl, and this is a scenario of parenting as you go, if you will. We were at some kind of kindergarten function, and there was this little boy just running around. He just had he was just a wild child, going around pushing on kids and all this other kind of stuff. And I saw him running up to my daughter. She must have been 4 or 5, getting ready to push her, but something happened. I think he tripped or something. And just before I could get in there, he tripped. And I said to my...
You sure you ain't tripping, Eddie?
Yeah, the Holy Spirit tripped him up. But in my mind, I said, what is my daughter going to do with some little wild child who does not know how to say no or to respond to no, like, or stop? So I came up with this plan in my head that very night, talked it over with my wife, and I said, when she's in school, I want her to, if somebody's confronting her, 1, tell them to stop. 2, if they don't stop, go tell the teacher. 3, if they go tell the teacher and the teacher doesn't do anything and they still won't stop, I said, you have my permission to punch whoever it is right in the nose. And when I told my wife this, I told her I'm going to teach her how to punch. So I had my hands up and I said, and I told her, the rules. 1, 2, 3. Stop, tell the teacher. If they don't stop, punch them dead in the nose. And I had her practice. We did this for about a week. But that was something that came out of that example of seeing that wild child. And fortunately, my wife at the time agreed with that. I can't imagine if I was a single parent trying to co-parent, and let's say the other parent never saw that, and they're just dead set against violence, right? My child is not going to be taught violence. How would I come to some sort of balance, if you will, to say, listen, you didn't see what I saw. And I think my child has every right to defend herself. I don't care if she a girl, because she needs to be able to protect herself for little crazy boys or girls who don't know how to stop or anything like that. So that was like an on-the-go parenting thing. As I was hearing you guys talk about that, I'm thinking in my brain, man, if I was a single parent and I'm co-parenting with another individual, because of what I saw, I was so passionate about teaching my daughter to defend herself. And I felt in my spirit that that was the right thing to do. If the other parent disagreed with that, how do I do that? So I guess my question would be to those single fathers who are parenting outside, how do you come to a conclusion on certain circumstances when sometimes things come up and it's, you know, a minutia detail that is passionate with one parent but not the other?
I can answer that as a single, as a father who is doing that as we speak. One, I go to every meeting. Even this Friday, we went to the school opening and we go together. Again, we're not together, but whenever it comes to anything with a child, I try to be present so we both can advocate for the child. And honestly, I think I put it in the talk. There's only two fathers. There's like 25 people in the room. There's only two fathers in that room. That was tough to see. But life goes on. What I would say when it comes to that, I always say to fathers, keep the end in mind. And I do that with my ex-wife. Whenever, you know, she has an opinion, you listen to what she has to say. But I say to her, keep the end in mind. Because everything we do has a circumstances. Because sometimes we think of the beginning, but we don't think of the end. And that's just a general how I operate. I keep the end in mind. So can I tell you what would have happened in your situation? I wouldn't. That's something that's more detailed. But whenever you're having that dialogue, just think about the end in mind. Whenever you make those kind of decisions, that because remember, your daughter is looking up to you. You're the coach. You're the mentor. In fact, you're everything to a great degree. So just keep the end in mind with those decisions, because she has the right to protect herself. But even with me, I got into trouble with well, not into trouble. Cops pulled me over one night on Sample Road, and all I did, I thought about the end in mind. I dialed 911, and I never came off 911. The guy said, "Can you come off the line?" I said, "I'm not coming off. I'm surrounded by cops with guns." So I thought about the end in mind, and until they left, I said to the 911 operator, "Thank you. I'm safe to go home." So always keep the end in mind. Food for thought.
Well, Rohan, you know,
Thank you, Rohan.
let me say this. Let me say this, because it is a very difficult situation when you are having to share or try to present your values when you don't have that much access. And a lot of times I hear a lot of dads, especially dads who maybe been married, or dads who have been in these relationships with the women at a level. Like if you've been in a certain level in the, like you guys went together, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, this and that. Well, you have a little bit more leeway and aspect than the dad who wasn't, and we sometimes forget that there is a percentage of dads who would love to do all the things and like to be a part and do all that, but they don't sometimes get the opportunity. They're actually getting the short end of the stick. And I think one of the reasons they're getting that short end of the stick is because they don't have any rights.
What?
Right? They can't go and say, look, we raised these kids, or we had these kids together from the beginning, me and you, and now you want to come. No, you can't. We was married, and we, you know, how we had, these kids came out of, again, sometimes the kids come out of sex, just some sex. And sometimes, as I always say, sometimes it's not it might have been consensual sex, but it was non-consensual fatherhood, where now they have to figure out, I'm going to try to work it out. But if the mom doesn't want to, you don't have no recourse to make her do so. Basically, basically you just better try to, as Lana would say, finesse as much as you can, right? You want to try to finesse. But the finessing can get you in even more trouble sometimes, because finessing for a lot of people is, I'm going to keep doing what I was doing before we had the baby. And then that'll keep me in good footing. But that's not healthy. That doesn't become healthy, because you don't really want that person. You're doing that, and that's not healthy for your child, because your child, a lot of jokers say, I'm going to see my kid at 2 o'clock in the morning. Going over my baby mama house to see my kid at 2 o'clock in the morning. Your baby in the bed asleep, Doc.
At least it should be.
What you going to see? You're going to see that mom, and that's those things. These things are very difficult, and a lot of times, a lot of those fathers sometimes just, and it looks like they're, as people would call, like deadbeats and don't want to do, but it really is that they don't have any recourse. And a lot of times, if they try to force something, they're gonna find themselves in a lot more trouble than getting what they really want. So that's when they have to go directly to the law. But the law ain't as much on their side as it is a guy who was married. The guy who was married, had the kids, he got power. Matter of fact, he can fool around and go in there and get the kids, and the mom got to do something. You ain't gonna get listen, even if the mom was on crack and a house was a crack house, they probably not giving that non-custodial dad the kids. I'm just going on the experience that I have seen. So he has to be humble. He has to be patient, and he has to get in the cracks when he can. It ain't you don't get to wear a cape. And it's almost like what Eddie's describing it, but it's tenfold of what Eddie kind of saying. So like, I know a value that I want my child to have. But if you don't get an opportunity to ever even share it, and if the mom doesn't think your value is important, then it's out the window.
I hear that. Okay.
So that's a small but a large group. And how I say that is a small group but a large group, that a lot of you guys are just trying to make it. And then, God forbid, you think it's bad for divorcees to get the new stepdad and all that. But for these non-custodial dads, when the new person come around, the mom be talking about give up your custody rights.
Yeah, yes.
You'll be like, what? What do you mean? Why would I want to do that?
I've seen it.
Man.
Why would I want to do that? Because you got a man now, and you saying that you don't want no problem. Listen, I don't want you, but it doesn't matter about wanting. It's just this. It would be easier for them if you disappear.
Yeah.
It's easier. A lot of people feel it's easier if these dads who not gonna be with them disappear. And I think that's just something we have to sometimes work on. And this is a community thing we got to work on. I don't think that could just be done. I hear a lot of positive women I know who are really advocating that right now, saying, listen, you're saying it's hard, but what accountability and responsibility did you put back to that father? I know you can do it on your own, but you shouldn't have to do it on your own. And it doesn't have to be a negative. See, I think that we always go to the negative, like, I'm doing this on my own. Well, yeah, what if you let go of it?
But a lot of times they're choosing that because the relationship didn't end the way they wanted to. It wasn't a positive ending to how the relationship, went its way. So as a result, they choose to want to do it on their own, and out of an intention of keeping him away or not having any connection to the father. So as a result, they push him to the side, impacting their children, not understanding. And then they turn around and say that I'm having to do this on my own. And then you have those women who may be more financially able to take care of the child on their own. They don't need the assistance, quote unquote, of the man. So those are the ones who are oftentimes, now that they're dating someone, want you to give up your rights. And I heard a couple of my clients come and say that to me, and I was like, she wanted you to do what? Well, but aren't you involved? Don't you want to spend time with your kid? Why would she feel like she could even come to you and tell you to give up your rights? And a lot of times some guys, because they're tired, excuse me, of having to fight her for time with their child, actually consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's great.
That's
crazy.
Yeah, at that point, I no longer have to pay I don't have to worry about the whole child support thing because it ain't my child. I've given up my rights and I no longer have that responsibility. And for some men, that's the ease of walking away because it has become such an overwhelming burden to them. And they give up on that only to, as they get older, still encounter that child who now has an issue with them because they feel like they gave up on them. Walks away.
So how does that
that
impact measured on the children? How does the lack of the father's presence, not even just physical presence, but emotional presence, impact the children? Right?
Major.
That's where I believe the men, where like Mr. Lightboard was saying earlier, which I truly respected the way you said it. I appreciate that. Thank you. I believe that's the reason why the legacy building is so difficult, right? I listened to Rohan. I listened to the gentleman last week. He talked about how he wrote the letters of everything that on his house and made a playground for his kid, right? Like these men are being intentional about the legacy that they're creating and the impact that they're creating in their children's life. They're giving them tools and resources of life. Mr. Eddie was talking about, I'm going to teach my daughter tools of resiliency. I'm going to teach her how to survive. This is about survival. Once daddy's not here, my daughter knows how to survive because I taught her that. You know, Ron, those things are things that are intentionally, methodically laid out and thought out because as men, we choose to break these generational whatevers and create generational grooming for our children, right? For our legacies to continue. So I ask because I believe we're forgetting about the children in the absence of the father, right? There's I'm not a psychology, but there's a score, I believe it's called the ACE score, that almost everyone in prison has a higher score. And it's because of the absence of fathers in their life. Like just the mere absence of fathers. ACE. There we go.
Yeah, but Castro, you're absolutely right. But they will never identify. I've been to many trainings, many of them. They'll never say that is because of fathers. They'll say because they don't have parents. So it's strategic. They'll leave out that this kid is with a single mother in a single home when they write the reports. Or they say when they're going to look at it, they'll say, oh, the ACEs says the kid is in major trouble because they only in a single parent home. They're missing a parent. They won't say the absence of the father is what really it is. And they won't say it to the mothers. They say your child is at a disadvantage because his father's not there.
Why isn't that being brought to light?
I can tell you an easy answer to that. Ron, give him an easy answer for that. You go to school in the mornings. I said it earlier. You see mostly mothers. You go, in fact, driving in the morning, I see the ducks and our babies. The ducks and our babies crossing the street. We are the fathers. we can look at it for what it is. You rarely see fathers. That's the reality. At the meetings.
So in nature. So I see you men. I see you men as a tribe, as a village, a council, right? There has to be a tribal council that has to be able to approve of rite of passage, right? When you talk about how our history was created and how we come from, right? We come from a lineage of passed down verbal history, right? people of the Nile. So to be able to move forward, you have to always have your village of counsel. When someone earlier was talking about having a circle of influence, right? I remember my mother telling me, 5 people you hang out with, that's 5 people you are. You're equivalent or the sum of 5 people, right? So what are the level of influences around you that are either elevating you or are bringing you down or keeping you stagnant, right? Now, how that's created intentionally, I think that's what matters, is what circle of influence do we intentionally want to get involved in? Is it the one that keeps us in comfort or the ones that makes us elevate and get closer to what needs to happen? I think, Rohan, you're a person that's a high achiever just by the way you identify, the way you action at, right? I would align myself with you just because that's how I would want to be, right? So I say that because what Mr. Lightborn was saying, and kind of just to land my plane in a sense, is how do we all collectively figure this lift as we climb, right? And be able to lift the community, the fathers that raise and mentor and elevate the children, which eventually will be the next generation of fathers.
It's changing the mindset of the people, because what happens is you have studies out there that will tell you the effects of a father not being in the home. You have higher incidences of teen pregnancies. You have higher incidences of incarceration. So they tell you all the statistics of fathers not being in the home, but they're not driving this point home to these single mothers.
Right.
And so that's where the disconnect is. So I have all the studies because I want to get the money for the grants, but I'm not hitting it on the grassroots effort to have these moms change their mindset on the importance of the father not even within the home, but within the child's life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. And sometimes when you talk to single moms, just with the father involved, it's almost as if they're like, well, if the father's involved, he's going to want to get back with me. 9 out of 10 times, that's not the case. The father's going to be involved with the child and move on with their life. And they're going to, it's the cooperation that they need from you in order for it to be a successful interaction within all the groups. So that's what it is. It's just to driving that point home to moms who have, and I have to say this, who have men who want to be involved fathers.
Right. Thank you, Gene. I think that's important too. Reminder, yeah. Because we have listen. I'm gonna give you a case study of this. Just a small case study of this. How the cycle does not seem to be stopping. I listened to somebody tell that their father died, right? Their biological father. They went to the funeral, right? But this biological father had a whole nother family, other kids, a whole nother life. And after the funeral, they were so distraught about the idea of how great his role as a father and a man of the citizen and all this was from the funeral. And they came in and talked, they vented about, why did he ever come and be that father to me? Why did he be that kind of father? How could he be a father to these people and do this, but he never did that and never came to be a father for me? And that, the guy who was around, who was, that they took on as their father figure, they said, they made a mention that that's my father and that's the person, this and that. And I looked at the person and I kind of listened to them and I almost wanted to say, but you know why that happened? It's the same thing that's going on with you and your child and your baby's father's not. You are keeping the child away from the father. You have the power to keep them away. But I think one of the issues is, and I think that let me correct myself. No, you have the power to dictate how it goes. The father does not want to, and I'm gonna put some of the fault on the father. He does not want to go by your rules of how he has to do things with his child. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with a lot of the dads, that they want to be able to exhort their own parentness not have to do your list of parenting as a mother, because they have a different, they're different from you. They're not going to do what you do, but the mom is saying, if you don't do the things that like I would like you to do, you're not going to be around this kid because it's my kid. I birthed the kid. And it's cool. I understand that they do have a deeper connection to the kid and their physical and mental, but a lot of times they don't understand that. And I explained to the person is, so you think that your biological dad, if he had the opportunity to be with you, he wouldn't have been the same kind of father with you that he was with his other kids he lived in the house with? There's something there that stopped him from being that type of father with you. The question is, what was it? You might not want to identify what it is because it's hurt. It's a hurt. It becomes hurtful to say. It's almost taboo to say because it breaks down this relationship between mom and child. To say, well, my mom didn't let me see my dad. She didn't facilitate it, and so my dad didn't see me. It's just easy to say my dad didn't want to see me. He wasn't a good father. He didn't want to be around me. When really both parents are responsible for this. And I want us to, one thing I'm always saying is there's no blame game. It's equal on both sides. It's equal on both sides. There's no blame. Like you can't say, oh, he didn't do or she didn't do. You both put the seed into the egg together. So y'all both need to be trying to figure out how you work it out. And a lot of times people refuse to. And like Castro say, the kids suffer. And the kid don't know why they suffer. And they grow into adults. And when the father died in the world talking about how great he is, they saying this ain't a great person because the person wasn't there for me. But it wasn't just that the person wasn't there for you, maybe. Sometimes they're not there for you, because I do know the scenario that I told you guys, and I said this many times about the guy who told the lady not to have the baby, and she had it anyway. And the girl wanted him to walk her down the aisle. He said, he ain't walking down your goddamn aisle because you're not my child. Because I told your mom not to, he refused to even talk to her. She only got that information from her siblings who was friends with her the whole 9 yards. And so that was hurtful, and many people felt like that was cruel and vicious. But sometimes, everybody had their rights to do whatever they want to do. But he was the twisted part about it. He was a great father and husband to the wife he chose and the kids he chose to have. And that becomes problematic. I know how problematic it comes. But that's what a lot of times what's happening out here. And there are kids suffering into adulthood with that, because the legacy, and I think Castro's thought about it, that legacy that fathers need to have, a lot of times the moms keep them. And fathers don't get the legacy.
Hey, I think, how you doing? Hey, Lawrence, you got something to say before I jump in here?
No, brother, go ahead on. This is very interesting. Y'all continue on.
No, I think when it comes to just men in general, we suffer from boring benevolence or being benevolently boring. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have two options and you don't know you have two options. You can kill them with kindness or you can kill them with creativity. You can make the individual that's against you remind them, if you did the right steps and you were just, if you was creative, if you was getting her, you understand, you can use the same creativity to have a relationship with your child. And what do I mean by that? It's something that, because women love edginess, we all know that. All of us got our own edginess. They love riskiness and stuff like that. The problem with it is we tap out when we use all the creativity to keep the woman that we no longer have, right? And none of that creativity to actually access the child that we will have forever. And so I'm saying that to say, let me give you an example. I was thinking about this. I said, okay, it's two types of liners. I can tell you that right now. Split personalities. You got the conscious liner, that's the one you hear on there. And then you got the crazy Negro liner. And when I wanted to tap my creativity, it wasn't the conscious Lionel that's the most creative. It's actually the crazy one. The crazy one said these, because I love the way he thinks. He said, well, what we can do is we can protest it. I'm like, I would have never thought about that. So protest everywhere she's at and everything she's doing, because guess what? At the end of the day, parenting is a character and it's character driven. And so if you're gonna publicly, you understand, publicly ruin my character, be it put me on child support or whatever, then I'm gonna publicly ruin yours. So if I have to stand 100 feet outside that 100, what they call it, that 100 yard, you understand? If I have to be 100 yards outside your job, protesting me not having a relationship with my job, I will. If I have to be 100 feet outside that club you hang out with, I will. If I have to be 100 feet outside that place where you get your hair done, I will. You got to understand, because you're going to understand it to be more beneficial for you to give me access to my child than it will not to. And so when you start to tap that creativity, you understand that you used to get her. You understand? To have, at least still to have access to your child. Trust me, women are intellectual beings, and the problem with that is that we too busy fighting with our tactics and are not enough communicating or trying to negotiate with them with their own. Because you saw, I think who was perfect with that, and she had a small sign, that was Dwayne Wade White with baby mama in downtown Miami. She had a small sign. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Now flip that when it comes to fathers. You understand? And so at the end of the day, parenting is a characteristic. Always remember that. And if it is a characteristic, then you can challenge a person's character legally and socially. You understand? Without facing the liability, and Johnny can speak to this, facing the liability of actually, what they call it, defaming someone's character. As long as it's true, you understand? And you can prove that it's true. You within your rights, I'm talking about within your civil rights, to protest anybody who keeps you away from your rights to something or a certain livelihood or a freedom that's yours. And I think, again, we as father, we have yet to tap our creativity when it comes to this fatherhood, simply because we're not serious enough about it or even wanting enough to actually change the trajectory of what's going on in this parenting.
Hey, Lonnie, you hit it on it. I remember there was a couple brothers I know had took social media to the next level. This brother, as soon as the day that he stopped seeing his kid, he started posting every day the number of days that he had not seen his kid, almost like and people start saying, man, why are you still posting that? And he was real clear about it. He said, because if I don't continue to keep it lit, you'll think that I don't want to see my kid. But every day I get up in the morning, you see me post something on social media, the first thing I post is another day I haven't seen my kid. And I think he got up to a number, he was up there like 100 and something days. You know, you start weighing that and you start thinking about it, and you look at that, and the mom has to look at that and say, you can't go and tell people that, oh, he doesn't want to get his kid, because why is he writing this on social media? He don't want to get his kid. Take the kid to his house. I've told moms numerous times in my conversations with them as their allies, as the support. Take the damn kids to their house and leave them. Oh no, I ain't gonna leave my babies. Oh, if I leave them over there, I said, then you don't want them to be with the dad. Then so you using that as an excuse. If you tired, your kids getting on your nerve, the dad getting on your nerve because he ain't doing that. Take the kids, drop their ass off, not at his mama's house, at his house. And guess what? Sometimes it's the fear that you drop them kids off over the house. And they be talking about, Mom, I don't want to come back yet. I want to stay at that house a little bit longer. That's the fear. I realize that's the fear, you know, and it's okay to have that fear because it means a lot. I think for single moms, and I listen to a lot of single moms working with them in the program I work with, is the fear is once they have these kids, this is all they really have sometimes. And that if they lose the kids, then they're complete. They lost the man and they lose their kids.
Oh.
To the man, they completely out. What can they do? Where are they at? And that's again, I tell them sometimes you need to go and reevaluate because these kids are not your whole life. Because they're gonna get old, and when they get older, what do you do then? You can't be the mom. You are the mom, but you can't be their mom forever. They get husbands, they get wives. You know, you're gonna be a nuisance to them because they got their own kids to worry about. They got time to wait for you to come over their house, be sitting up in there saying, "Oh, hey, what y'all doing, Mom? We gonna leave. You gotta go find you a companion. You need to go get Grady, and Grady need to go down to the shop." So, you know, it's just the realistic of that, and sometimes it's not said. It's not said very often because sometimes it can seem to be offensive to say it, but it's just sometimes it's the truth. You know, we're not saying that if that's for every mom, and I think this is very important that when we're talking to know that we're not speaking for every person, because I think and that's why we have this group, because every one of these dads on here can tell you we might be talking about the same topic, but we got a different way that we got to that topic. It's not monolithic. It's not, oh, these are people good, these people. No, it's you did this and this person did this, and I was a good dad, I was a bad dad, because we do have people that say, hey, I was a bad dad for 20 years. And now I'm a great dad. You know, so you have these opportunities to look at all these things. So, you know, it's just it's hard. It's hard facts, hard truths that sometimes that means that we got to put that mirror in front of our face and say, you know, is it somebody out there to get me? Is the boogeyman out to get me? Or do we put that mirror up and say, oh, when we look in that mirror, who's the boogeyman? We looking at him in the mirror.
I hear that.
Hey, Gaspar,
Yes,
real
sir.
quick, because Lightborn said it, but I was thinking this earlier and I wanted to ask you, have you ever come across a case where they're actually suing for poor parenting? Like, I don't agree with their parenting, so I'm coming to you as a father saying, look, I want my kids out of there. I want them for me because this person. Now, not because it's neglectful, because I know, you know, if it's neglectful parenting, things like that, of course, you go through DCF, everything else. But I'm saying they're like, look, we just don't agree on how this parenting should go, and I want my kids out that house, and I want you to help me get them out of the house. Have you ever come across a case like that?
Yeah, I've had people come to me about those cases. And you know what I tell them? What did Rob say? If she ain't on crack, and she's in a crack house, the child ain't going nowhere.
She could be on drugs. She could be on drugs. As long as she do the treatment to get out, she gonna keep her kids, and you won't get you still is with your visitation time. It's just the reality of it. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I would listen, Johnny. I would feel that when you see these dads who pay these exorbitant amounts of money, you know, like $10,000 to $20,000 a month in child support type things, right? You would assume that if they could get a lawyer to show that, hey, I'm paying this much money, and listen, this is how my kid is living. This is what my kid doesn't have, this and that. But I feel like it will come back exactly to the same thing, that, well, maybe you just need to give some more money to the situation.
And sadly, because if he's able to pay that level of income per month, oftentimes he's not as available.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the court is going to say, well, sir, if you're not there, how do we allow you to have the children? And I look at the Dwayne Wade case as a anomaly, where he was able to get his children full custody. And that was because the mother's mental health actions, her behavior, seemed to be contrary to a parent and was very constantly bucking what the court was advising her to do. That's why she lost custody to those children, because she was so mad with him that every time he wanted to do X, even though the court told her, she fought it and ultimately shot herself in the foot, as we say, because she wasn't just going against him, she was now fighting the court and not following the court order. And that's ultimately why she lost custody to him, because you would have never thought he's a He's a basketball player. He's traveling for what, 70% of the year. He's constantly gone. How in the world does he end up with full custody? His wife is an actress, so she's constantly flying all over the place. How in the world could he get full custody over their mother? That was anomaly. But when you look at her behavior throughout that case, that's how she lost custody. And oftentimes, going back to what Ron said, it's not about their ability, they have the money, but oftentimes when they have the money, they're not available because they're constantly gone. Their work hours are what they are. They're not available, whatever it may be. So as a result, you're right. The court's gonna say you got to throw more money at it. Let's hire somebody, since you got the money, let's hire somebody to be there or to do X or to whatever in the case may be with the kids. And it's a sad scenario there. But yeah, I've had people come to me, Gene, wanting that. But unfortunately, like as Ron said, and unfortunately what has been shown, unless she is a complete danger to those children and has exposed them to where they can be, injured or hurt, and it's been something, and she's not doing anything to fix the situation, that's the only way that you will see. And he has to be a father that, let's say he is married, has and he has the means and he has the time, then he may be able to get more time sharing and potentially have a temporary custody of them. But very rarely does that lead to him getting full custody and taking them away because of her values or her parenting ways.
Okay, I got one more question for you, Gaspar, because you said something that sparked another question, and it may sound, forgive my ignorance on this. So you have someone who's paying a lot of money for child support, because you said they will be around less, right?
Yeah,
so,
they're not available.
Right. So because of the fact that they have to keep producing this money. So what if they, in the situation where they say, you know what, I want to be around more, I have to take a job that pays me less, right? Mm-hmm. Will they lessen the child support?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you the perfect example. The dude, Jesse, what's his name? The dude from Grey's Anatomy, the light-skinned, bright-eyed boy. You know what I'm talking about. The dude from Grey's Anatomy.
Jesse Williams.
Him and his wife, they've been fighting. They've been going with this child support and divorce thing for a long time. And just recently, because he's no longer on Grey's Anatomy, he was paying $40,000 a month when he was on Grey's Anatomy. He told the court he's no longer on Grey's Anatomy. He's now doing Broadway shows. He's not making that kind of money and he needs it reduced. And they reduced it to $6,000, whatever. She said, no, that's a lie. He's getting residuals. He's making money off of X, Y, and Z. And the court went through everything and they ordered that he only pay $6,000 a month now in child support because he's no longer making the Grey's Anatomy money that he was making before. So yeah, he's getting residuals, but he's not making that level of money on a regularly monthly basis for him to justify or the court to equate the number that she desired. So yes, if they are making, if they want to cut back the time and it's not an intentional, because I got dads I had a dude, man, this man was making dang near $10,000 a month pushing trucks across the country. When the court hit him with the child support, my man stopped the trucking and said he ain't trucking no more and started working some regular job so he don't have to pay that child support. I couldn't believe that. I said, what? Because when he went to court and he was telling the judge how he got to pay for all these things. And the judge said, okay, I'm going to give you all of this, right? That's what he was trucking. I'm going to give you the fact that you got to replace the tires every month, even though we know that ain't true. I'm going to give you the $500 every month for the tires you say you got to replace. I'm going to give you this. And you still paying $1,000 a month. And he just didn't want to pay it and quit the job. So, and in that scenario, the court couldn't do anything because he quit the job. So you can't, at the end of the day, it's about finances. But in that situation, he just lost, he didn't want the time. And that was one of those fathers, sadly, that didn't want to be involved with his children. He didn't desire that. And he was simply, he would just didn't want to pay the child support that was part of it. And he's the type of father that when we talk here about rehabilitating men to understand their impact the fact that he was willing to not be involved with his children intentionally, that hurt me to the core. And I think that's when I tell you that's why I don't practice family law no more, because I get too emotional, because I really wanted to slap him real hard, but I can't do that. I can't do that because at the end of the day, I'm off the court, you know, but that emotionally,
I'm not.
You know, that emotionally impacted me. And that's why I don't do family law, because the stuff when it comes to parents and, you know, what I see happen to fathers and those fathers who don't want to be fathers, that has really pushed me emotionally to say, how can a man not want to be involved with his children? And Ron, before you go to, that was a non-consensual, consensual.
Oh, no, you listen, no, I'm pretty sure it was a consensual full-term relation. Listen, and I'm glad that you said that, Johnny, because this is important for us to know is when we're saying like in these some instances when we see these non-consensual, a lot of these things are fully consensual. These dudes have made a conscious decision that they ain't doing shit. That's all it is. It ain't.
Bro, how did men get to this level, bro? Like, when do we not care about
They
our
just have
kids?
determined that they not parenting no kids.
That's it.
Okay. Let me get an answer for that, Ramirez. What I've seen, I have 3 fathers that I deal with outside of this program. They've told me to leave the program. It's a waste of time. These guys are bums. Go find a job. Go stop wasting time with this fatherhood program. You mean, what are you guys gonna really do? You've been there wasting 2 years. To be truthful, my mom actually told me that. And let me tell you why. You gotta look at culture, 1. And 2, Ron hear me say this every day. There's 2 type of guys. There's a feeling guy who he walks with feelings. And there's a guy who doesn't walk, who looks at logic. And when you deal with those kind of persons, when we talk, I think you mentioned values. And let's do that. Let's talk values. Values shows your action and your intent. That is my opinion of values. So if you're dealing with fathers who have feelings against the mom, and then he get, not only does he have against the mom, he says, you know what, man, you know what, I can't bother with the kids, man, because I'm not going to do it nobody over there no more. So the kids get hurt because no, he's upset with the mom and he's upset with the kids.
And a lot of the time that comes from where they came from, what their own personal experience is. And I'll tell you, the majority of the time when a man does not want to be involved, or if a woman doesn't want to be involved, it's oftentimes by what they've personally experienced, what their own upbringing may have been, what their exposure to this world has been to them. And unfortunately, whether it be the father left, whether it be the mom wasn't there, various things impact how we get to that point, Castro, where a man says, I know I don't want to deal with this. This is my daddy wasn't there for me. And although sometimes we hope that you would want to be the opposite of that, many men unfortunately end up following that same road that his father took, because it impacted him emotionally, and he may have gone through some other things, we don't know. But a lot of times it's based upon people's personal experiences that lead them to make that choice. I can't understand it either. But I have seen it, unfortunately, and 9 out of 10 times it's where the person came from. Because I asked, how could you feel this way? And then you find out, oh, my daddy wasn't involved. My mom wasn't involved. I was raised by, different people, and nobody really cared about who I was. I was left to the streets. I was thrown out to the foster care program. Various reasons people have. But, at the end of the day, that's why when I tell people, when I got married the second time before I remarried, I had to go through therapy to deal with a lot of the things that I had dealt with from my first marriage. And I required that the woman that I was going to be married to a second time had to be a certain way. I had to see, and this ain't everybody, but I had to see a mama and a daddy in her life. And if the both of them weren't alive, they died. But she had them in her life. So she understood what that was all about. She had to see them be married. They couldn't be I ain't trying to hear no co-parenting, nothing. This was just me, because my past experience showed me when a woman doesn't have a father in her life, she fails to understand what it means and what her expectations are, what to expect from a man. And if a man hasn't taught a woman what to expect from a man, she will take anything from him. And even when it comes good, she won't even know it's good. So that's why for me,
Johnny,
you know,
you just hit my soul with that. That's I never looked at the impact of my wife not having a relationship with her dad.
Yep.
I remember we talked about that when her and I were dating because I was 32.
Yeah.
And I talked about that with her. Like, you move different because you don't have a dad in your life. And I've never looked at it now into our marriage now of 9 years and how that's influenced how she deals with the boys and me. Wow.
Hey, you know, there's a TikTok out there. This woman, right? She's married to this guy, and she said she didn't understand the impact of growing up with all these female influences only until she got with her boyfriend at the time, who became her husband, because the women around her were so set on they didn't need a man, they're independent, that when she got with him, she didn't understand how to let him be a man. And he had to teach her how a man runs and how a man rolls in order for her to be able to take a step back to allow him to be the man and lead the relationship. And so I thought that was very interesting when I was watching that, because like you said, the impact of a male role model in children's lives is paramount. It's paramount. It's
how do you know how to lead? How do you know how to lead?
You don't understand what you're missing until you realize the importance of what it is that was absent.
Yeah.
And to add to that, you know, as a single father dating or meeting women with the intent of hopefully to remarry, I remember my mentor Ron said to me years ago, if you're doing it over, do it better than how you did before.
Hey, listen, my choice. Listen, my choice has got. See, Eddie had a different experience. He was married to her till she died, and then he got another one, and this another long relationship again. Ain't everybody fortunate like Eddie? But if I'm gonna choose again, I believe me, my choice. I'm crossing every T, dotting every I.
You have a different perspective then.
The flag
a lot of us chose early because we didn't even know ourselves. We got thrown into making a relationship.
It ain't even gotta be a red flag. If the flag look pink, go, you out. I ain't even trying to hear you, you know?
Gascar's gonna be like, you got that one hair that just moves to the other side too much for me. Next.
I will say though, I will say again, times change.
Yeah.
A lot of relationships are, I think I said it to Ron, you know, they had those old school, where's the paper? Those old school relationships where you know, now you have blended families and you have all these terms today. But even as times change and social media and all these influences, it's going to boil back down to the values. It's going to boil back down doing the work. And many people don't want to do the work. The video game is doing the work. The computer is doing the work. In fact, the teacher is doing the work. And to change it, can I change it? Can all of us here change it? Maybe not. But there's one thing you can do though. If every male meets you along the way, give him the advice, because some will drop it to the ground and some will hold on to it. That's all you can do. And maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if we're still here, your children, that person who you met in the elevator will walk with those values and say, you know what, a guy told me this 15 years ago in the elevator and I ran with it. That's a change we can make.
And with that being the case, Ron, we could ride or die out at 8.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. Listen, I was looking at the clock, and I know everybody was getting really emotional right now, getting really nitty gritty.
I appreciate you gentlemen creating the space.
For sure.
I'm just gonna tell you tonight, this was a really, really good conversation tonight. Definitely I'm hoping that people are watching this and they're going to share this with people who need to hear some of the things that were said tonight, mainly fathers and mothers, because I think that one of the key points that is missing is that people are trying to do things on their own, and they're not really listening to what the reasonable, the sound, what was that, sounds of blackness. I'll use that. The sounds of blackness is trying to tell them. They're just trying to do it. I can do it my way, and you need to be able to look for another way. And not that your way is bad, but how can you modify your way to fit that you're still comfortable? And I think we had a lot of good suggestions tonight. We had a lot of good experience, a lot of good examples to kind of look at. Hey, we can be ride or die co-parents, but we got to work on it. We got to communicate. We gotta listen. As Castro said, we gotta want to do that. Listen, anything we want to do, we do. Listen, I tell my kids in the school, they say, "Oh, I said, what about that cell phone? Everything for me is a cell phone. I don't feel good. I don't want to go to school today. Or if you use a cell phone, you go to school today. If the cell phone is the tester for everything. If you got kids, the cell phone will tell you. If the joker not using the cell phone and they don't put it down, it's something wrong with it. But they know how to use a cell phone for everything. But the cell phone is your tester if anything is wrong. So that's a mindful message to all parents. The cell phone is the tester for everything. And use the cell phone as your excuse for everything. And they say they don't want to, oh, well, you don't want to use the cell phone. Oh, they'll quickly change their mind. You can cell phone is your rod now. You can use the rod called the cell phone if you get your cell phone for your kid. That's the message for tonight. Gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank good words tonight. And again, if you see this on a replay, subscribe, like us, so you can come and see us next week. We're working right now. I got the list of the new topics. We're going to be working on them right now in the next. Well, we're going to be looking on this week and getting them together and send them out to the team for us to get together. And we hope to see you again next week, next Tuesday. For the fathers who want to continue this conversation and get a little bit more in depth, look in the message, look in the chat, and join us on the Zoom tomorrow. We'll be here. We'll finish this up, and it'll be a little bit more intense, a little bit more accountability put in there for you as the fathers that's coming in there. You know, we do the nice stuff for the show, but we get a little bit more, as Lionel said, we're gonna get a little more thug with it. Thug, nitty gritty, ragamuffin with it when we come privately in the private group tomorrow night at 6:30. So with that being said, fathers, repeat after me. I am. I say I am. I am a man of honor.
I am a man of honor.
I said I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of courage.
Fathers, I said that I am.
I am.
I say I am. I am a man of respect.
I am a man of respect.
Now, fathers, we could get a little bit, y'all see a little, not hyped up. Let me get y'all hyped up like it's Friday night football, Saturday, college football, Sunday, NFL football. I said that, fathers, I am.
I am.
I said that you are.
You are.
I said that we are.
We are.
Championship fathers.
Yes, bro.
So don't get it twisted. We're not flexing our muscles. What we're doing is we're letting you know that we hold our families on our shoulders. We lift our kids up on our arms. And that's what fathers need to do. And that shows strong fatherhood. And that's our way of doing that. We do this aspirations so you can have something to take you through the rest of the week until you meet with us again. Or you meet with us tomorrow. We do it a little bit more intensely. With that being said, thank you everybody for joining us. And we'll see you all again here next time at Fatherhood Talks.
Yes, sir. All right, my
Great
brother.
conversation, gentlemen.
Take care.